The final session is going to run slightly differently to the one we've just been through. It's going to be a series of quick talks from a range of fantastic businesses talking around some of their innovations. I'm delighted that a couple of the speakers are from our top 40 Northern Game Changers list. But first up, we have Sophie from Slalom.
Afternoon everyone, I'm Sophie Kim, a Senior Principal at Slalom, and here today to talk to you about everyday innovation. This is a little bit about Slalom Manchester. So we have 21 Manchester DNA consultants, 70 DNA consultants in the UK, 1,700 plus DNA consultants globally, lots of sets between us, lots of partnerships, which you can see there. And Slalom do more than just data as well. We do all these things below, so I'm not going to go over it too much, but just to give you a sense of who we are at Slalom. Innovation. So when we think about innovation, we quite often think of massive game-changing things. We might think of Teslas, we might think of genome mapping and all these crazy things, but actually, I want to talk about everyday innovation because there's things every day that we can do to just be a little bit more innovative. This is my toddler, and when I think of innovation, this is what I think of. And some things about my toddler. He's willing to try something new. He'll try things multiple times. He's not afraid of failure, and he is new around here. And that last point especially is really pertinent. There's a piece of research from the people at Berkeley, and they call it the Blicket Experiment. And Blickets make a machine play music in a nutshell. The participants are then asked to identify Blickets, and the participants are children and adults. And what you find is that children pay attention to the evidence and they identify multiple Blickets. But what adults do is something quite different. The adults will just go with their expectations essentially and their life experience. They'll only ever pick one Blicket. So there's a conclusion here really. Adults are more likely to ignore evidence that contradicts their expectations. We all do it. And if you think about what a barrier that is to spotting opportunity, and indeed what a barrier to innovation. Speaking of barriers to innovation, we can't innovate without change, can we? And we don't like to change, do we? Because we're comfortable, we fear failure, we're not like a toddler. We have strength of habit. And this strength of habit is particularly something that can really hold us back. And just to illustrate this example, I'm going to use this example, it's classic, sorry, I know you've probably seen it before, but smoking. And I'm going to talk about something that I'm going to call the bar for change. By bar for change, I mean, what does it take really for you to change a habit, to do something differently? What is that bar for change for you, for something specific? In 1957, the British Medical Research Council first announced the connection between lung cancer and smoking. And you might think that would really influence smoking rates. In fact, it did not. And it even didn't really impact the stock market prices of tobacco companies. 55% of people smoked in 62. That rate went down to 46% in 74 after the government banned cigarette advertising on TV, health warnings on cigarettes. 92, the first nicotine skin patch becomes available. The smoking ban came into force, and in 2016, the price of a pack of 20 cigarettes broke £10. And still in 2016, 16% of people smoke. You can see along the way, the bar of change has been met for a lot of people, but there's a 16% of people you've got to wonder what would need to change. Where is their bar for change for this particular habit? And it's easy to think about smoking if we don't smoke and think, oh, well, that's not me. But actually, we all have habits, don't we? Every single day, things that we do. What would it take? What's your bar for change? To move to a different place? What would it take for that to happen? To take a new route on your drive home? What would have to happen for that to happen for you? What would it take for you to try a different coffee place if you're a creature of habit and like to go to the same place every day? So I've talked about little pieces of innovation, little pieces of change every single day. And of course, when we do giant projects, they're made up of lots of little changes, lots of little things that we get people to do. I did a project with a large UK-based financial service institution last year. They asked us to assess their cloud implementation project because it'd been going for a long time and not a lot had been delivered, and I mean a long time. So we came in, we had a look, and they really wanted us to focus on technology. And it often does come down to people, process, technology. But as we often found, it wasn't really about the technology. The technology was spot on. It was all about people and process, and that's where they were getting blocked. And that's a really, really important point. Back to this, big change comes from lots of smaller changes. Thinking about a cloud implementation program, how many people do you have to get to do something different every day to successfully implement a cloud program? It's a lot. And how do you convince them to do it? Well, a really good way of convincing people to do something is selling them the vision at the end, like what they're going to get out of it. So, like, you're going to have to do all this stuff, okay, but at the end of it, this is what it's going to look like, feel like, and this is what it's going to mean for you. Helping them understand that can be a really important aspect here. And actually, if it's a really big program of change, like 5 years, it might not be good enough to say, 5 years, it's all going to be really great, guys. You've just got to do all this stuff for 5 years. And this is where the concept of MVPs and roadmaps and consistent milestones of value being released. And I know this is something that Ben from Bruntwood, I think, mentioned MVPs, but yeah, aspects of value along the way, releasing increments of value is a massive, massive motivating factor. And the last point, really, removing barriers for people to make the changes required of them. Ask someone to use a new platform, do something different every day. There's already a lot to stop them, as we've discussed, not least habit. And so if we can make it as easy as possible for people, have you ever gone to use a new platform that someone's begged you to use and you can't log in, or you don't know how to use it, and actually the icon to do something, you can't even find it? It's happened to everyone, hasn't it? So we came in for this particular company with a fresh pair of eyes and expertise in a field. So we were there to kind of support and unblock. And I think sometimes a fresh pair of eyes is a really, really great way to kind of spot something or even innovation. This is something we do quite often. So if you are interested in this type of work, then, please do feel free to get in touch with Solomon on this. Closing thoughts. Be more toddler. Had to say that. Pay attention to things you might usually ignore. Innovation requires change. There's a really great piece of research called the Innovators Dna from Harvard, which is great to Google. Didn't get time to talk about it today, but what I would say about this is the research shows that the best innovators, like we're talking CEOs, executives who are great at innovation, they shake things up every day. And this is the Innovators DNA. And so I present an innovation challenge to you. It takes 66 days to build a habit. So shake things up every day, challenge your status quo, speak to someone in a different department, ask a question you wouldn't normally ask, spend 20 minutes Googling something you don't understand, observe a customer and try something new even if you might fail. And hopefully, it will help you be more innovative every day.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sophie. It's so interesting to see innovation broken down in that way, and really echoing some of those topics that came up in the leadership panel earlier. Absolutely going to be taking that be more toddler with me, trying new things. Also, when we spoke about Bruntwood Works earlier and creating those innovative workspaces, Slalom are actually based in one of those spaces. So if you hang around them, they're the kind of people that you're going to be able to meet. Next up, I'm delighted to introduce Elizabeth from the Business Growth Hub.
Hi, so I'm Elizabeth Slate from the Business Growth Hub. Just a very quick introduction to the Growth Hub, if you're not aware of it. It's a fully funded business support service for small and medium-sized businesses in Greater Manchester. We're a huge network of experts in all different aspects of business. I'm on the innovation team and I'm an eco-innovation advisor. What that means is I help businesses to get new products and services to market. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the need for eco-innovation and the drive towards a circular economy and how businesses can participate in that a bit more. So hopefully I don't need to talk too much about the need for eco-innovation. The weather situation at the beginning of the week I think says all it needs really. But there's a lot of other things going on in the landscape that should be driving businesses to participate in developing eco products and services. So we've got local, national and international agendas, things like net zero targets for Greater Manchester, that's 2038. We've got eco taxes coming out all the time now, so extended producer responsibility schemes making businesses more responsible for the waste they put out in the world. We've got the plastic packaging tax to encourage recycled packaging, and we've got legislation starting to come in, like the government's published the Green Claims Code to try and clamp down a bit on greenwashing. So the code is kind of a voluntary thing at the moment, but we are starting to see some big names in the news where they've clamped down on like greenwashing type advertising. We've also got some real SME specific issues. So one of them that we hear quite a lot is the big companies, the really big ones, the household names, they've got these big headline ambitious ESG targets, which is great, but what that actually means is they're pushing those requirements down the supply chain to the small and medium-sized businesses there who don't necessarily have the resources, the systems to deal with that. And we've also obviously got this big drive to the circular economy. It's a bit of a buzz phrase of choice at the moment. You might have heard of it. We know that it's not that well understood by businesses, but it's really important to remember that circular isn't just about recycling. It's about keeping the materials, the energy, the resources, and critically, the value in that system. So how can people sort of engage in the circular economy? How can businesses move towards that? There's two really big factors at play. So the first one is design for circularity. So that's material choices, process choices, and really designing the whole life cycle of that product. And the second really important part is business models. So we need to be using new, innovative, different business models. There's a few examples of that. So things like closed loop recycling is one. We know that works well for some things, so things like glass and metal, but definitely doesn't work well at the moment for textiles, for example. We've got share and repair models, we've got take back and remanufacture, and other kind of rental leasing type models. What you'll find is really that businesses need both those big factors, the design and the business models, to really make the circular economy work. And the other point I just want to make before I finish is that if you're thinking, well, that just sounds like it's about manufactured physical products, it's really not. We need the technology enablers, we need the service companies, the businesses who are involved in things like logistics to make these new business models work. So if anything struck a chord with you today, please do get in touch with us at the Business Growth Hub. Thanks.
Thanks ever so much, Elizabeth. What I find so exciting about this is that we're seeing more and more of that overlay between sustainability and innovation. And as Elizabeth rightly points out, it's no longer just the big global companies that have to think about this. It's businesses of every size. And we're so lucky in the region to have the support of people like the Business Growth Hub to help us embrace that. Next up, I have Jason from ProMake, who's one of our top 40 Northern Game Changers. He also spoke for us at last year's Innovation Exchange. And I think every time I hear you speak, Jason, even when it's just a conversation, I feel like we're almost veering into kind of sci-fi territory. There's some really, really exciting stuff going on. So I shall leave you to explain more about ProMake.
Wow, what an exciting time to be living in a world of innovation. You know, especially here in Manchester, you know, the collaborative mindsets of people have really pioneered this town into something magical. Now, a lot of you would probably disagree with me on this, especially with us having gone through the pandemic recently. When it comes to innovation, you're going, where's innovation? How are we supposed to get innovation? Yeah, we're seeing basic things come up here and there into the city. But innovation itself, everybody seems to be in lockdown and in many respects, besides just being at home. And the question is where and how is innovation supposed to thrive? For me, it's a matter of the city has gone through a matter of what I call a shake-up to catch a wake-up, really, because we all have come to the point where we've came to a grinding halt, and now what? For us, this was a game changer for us. It absolutely was, because my background is I come from a world of 3D printing. I've been in 3D printing field since the early 1990s, watched it grow over the years, been in the medical field, aerospace, many sectors. So being from an innovative kind of mindset really set the stage for us. But what really set us apart was we had to, like everybody else, find a way to pioneer our business into a new aspect of developments and cycles of production, but in a world where we couldn't leave our homes. So what we did, we came from Manchester, the home where graphene has been found. Most of you know what graphene is. For those that you don't know it is, it's a single layer that's 1 atom thick, that's 200 times stronger than steel, 7 times more conductive than copper, and is exponential in its uses that can be used. A carbon atom, you know, we all made from carbon. There's so much that can be done for it. So what we did, we found a way to take graphene and molecularly fuse it to our polymers and put them through 3D printing machines. So we're now going from 3D printing now into 4D printing. Now, why do I say 4D printing? 4D printing means that we can all 3D print a plastic cup. Great, you can put water in it, you can do whatever you need to do, sure. But what happens if that cup could tell you the so-called sensitivity from a pH level, tell you the conductivity of it, the temperature of it, all from a single programmed digital plastic? So we decided, well, we're going to take this, and what are we going to use it for? COVID kicked in. So we decided, well, we'll take graphene with our 3D printing systems, change our whole business, flip it on its head, move forward, find something where everybody's having a challenge. We've all been for a swab. You've got the swab up your nose, you've gone for a PCR machine, most uncomfortable thing. Let's look at the full ecosystem. What made us different was we decided to take graphene with our 3D printers and create a lab on a chip system. So we're almost creating a PCR machine in the palm of your hand, links to your cell phone. How does this change everything? Well, you don't have to drive anywhere, so the carbon footprint, the speed to getting tests done, the innovations of being able to get your doctors to be able to map your full physiology based on the data that's coming from it without you even leaving your home. So it's putting a lab in your home. Great, so we kicked off with this, we got going, started creating the whole magic around the graphene, what we call functionalizing. We started developing the whole system, and it exploded. It started to take off very fast. We got selected for a multi-billion-pound government framework tender called the National Microbiology Framework. Evolved from there. Before we knew it, Microsoft has now, from Seattle in the UK, partnered with us to take this onto a global platform. We're now developing situations where we can put this into virtual wards, virtual hospitals, put them in your home, so you can start taking control of your own health from home for peanuts, really for pennies, really. This is a change of digital health. This is the future of where we're going. Could you imagine taking control of your health at the speed of lightning, really? Having it based that you could be anywhere in the world and know that you could be taken care of at first world levels. I'm originally from South Africa, from Johannesburg. Currently we're going through stages of 3 times a day where we have no power and up to a week without water. But yet, this device, charge it for a few hours, put it into somebody's home, and you've got first world level healthcare taken like you get here in the UK. Does that not change the world? Does that not make you think, what do we do with this? Where can we go with this? To the point that we even said with you know, you look at Elon Musk comes from Pretoria. I'm from Johannesburg. We're like 40 minutes from each other. With him doing with space voyage to Mars and, you know, human space flight. You can't hop off that spaceship and go back home and go and see a doctor. So by being able to do this, we're able to data transfer your data from the test to be able to work out exactly what your test results are for COVID or for any other disease, so that you're then able to get treatment through 3D printing bioplotters to print 3D printable customized drugs based on that without even leaving the distance of the spacecraft. This is really revolutionary as to where it's going to be going. So it's not a matter of where we are right now, it's more the principle of where do we go next. Thank you very much.
Didn't I promise you sci-fi? It's phenomenal that that technology is here now and it's available to use. And as I say, every time I speak to Jason, it's another project. He's the only person I know who saw actually getting COVID himself as an opportunity to really drive new product innovation through. And we're going to be watching that journey really closely to see where it gets to. Next up, we have another one of our Northern game changers working in a completely different sector. Some of you may have seen Invisible Cities and Invisible Manchester, but it is just one of the most incredible new business models that I've seen. I'm not going to steal Lauren's thunder in telling you about it, but if you haven't already engaged with the organisation, I'm sure you will after this.
Hello. I don't do things like this very often, so you'll have to bear with me with the old technology. So I am Lauren, and I'm from Invisible Cities. So we're a social enterprise, and we train people who have experienced homelessness to become walking tour guides of the city centre. We currently operate in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Cardiff, York, and of course Manchester. And our whole aim is about breaking down the negative stereotypes and stigmas that surround homelessness, but also kind of empowering our guides to be able to share their stories. So I run Invisible Manchester. This is our fabulous team. And 100% of our profits that we make from tour sales go directly back into the local homelessness ecosystem. So that's what we're all about. So what we do is innovative projects within homelessness in Manchester. So I thought what I'd do today is to share a couple of them with you.
The first one is writing on the wall. So obviously the lockdown, we all know what happened. Kind of overnight, everybody was swept up off the streets and put into hotels and hostels around Greater Manchester. And what we did is we identified a real issue with this, which is that across Greater Manchester, there's so much support out there for people experiencing homelessness. There's thousands of organisations doing incredible work, but overnight, lots of them closed down, lots of them didn't have funding, but also the way that people know about them is through word of mouth. So a lot of rough sleepers will kind of chat to each other and they'll be like, you know, on Wednesday I'll see you at Live Share for the soup kitchen, and on Thursday I'll see you at this. But obviously, overnight that all changed. And there's no centralised place in Greater Manchester where people can gain access to that. You might think Google, but a lot of people don't have access to technology. So this was a real issue when things kind of pivoted to the digital age, and there's a lot of people who didn't have access. So what we did with our team is created Writing on the Wall, which I've got the first ever copy here, which I managed to dig out. But it's basically just 2 sides of A4, and one side had a list of all the support that people could access in Greater Manchester at the time. And then the other side, our tour guides were like, right, we don't want this to just be a leaflet that we hand out. Let's actually be really creative with it. It'd be great to kind of showcase some of the work that we're doing. So on the other side is creative space. So it's room for poetry, photography, we've had raps before, we've had whatever you can think of, and all of the submissions are done by people who have lived experience of homelessness. So what we did in the lockdown is we created this, everything was edited and curated by our guides who all have lived experience, and then we printed them out and we went around to different shelters and different hotels and kind of gave them out. And the really kind of empowering thing was that just from one small idea, how it's kind of ricocheted out and into what it is now. So a lot of people said they loved the idea of the creative space. Could they submit things? And we were like, yeah, we don't really know how to do that. So we kind of, the moral behind this, I guess, is with innovation, sometimes you have to continue to innovate as projects grow and expand. And where we're at now with it is we've just hired Rick. He has lived experience of homelessness and he's our Writing on the Wall coordinator. So he goes across Greater Manchester into different shelters and organisations, delivers creative workshops, and that's where we gain our creative submissions. We also have just launched, well, we're about to launch a website. So there's a physical kind of in the online, that's the word I'm looking for. There's a physical online version of each Writing on the Wall issue, which is amazing because if somebody submits something and then they lose the paper copy, then it's just gone. Whereas we're going to have it all in a centralised place. So if someone's like, yeah, I submitted this piece of poetry, and then they want to use it for their CV or cover letter for a job or just to show their friends and family, there's always a place where they can go back to find it. So that's just the moral behind Writing on the Wall, is that we identified an issue and now it's expanded into this massive thing. It's connected lots of different homelessness organisations across Greater Manchester. The second one I wanted to talk about was our poster campaign. So obviously you can see a bad place for a poster, an even worse place for a bed. Really simple. I literally whipped it up on Canva in about 10 seconds. And the moral behind this is that you don't have to spend loads of money, loads of resources, lots of effort to be innovative. So we basically sat in a room, and as I said before, our whole aim is to break down stigmas and stereotypes that surround homelessness. And we were like, yes, our tours are great, we get lots of people on them, we engage in meaningful interaction, but actually to take the step to come on a tour, you already have kind of probably a particular viewpoint and a particular way of thinking. So we actually wanted to engage members of the public who would maybe never ever come on our tours. So what we did, we whipped them up, we printed them out, put them across our cities in various spots like this one. Obviously they got taken away straight away, but the message had already been made. They actually went viral and they've been shared by over 2 million times, which is wild. So lots and lots of times they've been seen by loads of people. It always crops up on Lad Bible from time to time. It came up on TikTok the other day, even though we did the campaign a couple of years ago. But literally for this campaign, we spent £50, that was it, to put them in across all our different cities. And it's just a really powerful message that makes people think, actually, next time I'm walking past somebody who's sat in front of Sainsbury's, I'm going to say hello, I'm going to engage in conversation. And because of the kind of technology and the viral age that we're in, people in the comments started to comment okay, this is what you can actually do, rather than just ignore somebody. So that's just a really good example of how something small and a small idea that didn't cost much could make a massive impact. These posters are now in the York Museum, and they're also in like the New York City Museum of Posters, which is crazy. So apparently it's like the first ever museum dedicated solely to posters and poster art. And My Little Canva creation is up there. Can't wait to see it one day. And that is basically everything from me. If you're interested in the work that we do, obviously our tours are quite innovative in themselves. It's a really different way of kind of breaking down boundaries, but there are social channels, so please do give us a follow. And if you're interested in anything I've talked about today, feel free to reach out. Yeah, my name's Lauren. Thank you.
What an absolute inspiration. Thank you, Lauren. I mean, anybody who looks at their organisation and thinks that they have challenges and they have problems to solve, I think this just proves that no matter how big the problem is, no matter how small the budget is, passionate, innovative people who draw on those diverse communities, bring everybody into the solution, can do phenomenal things. Next up, I have Tammy from WorldPay. As you can imagine, the payment space has had to be highly innovative. I'm sure most of you are now in a position where you just don't carry cash anymore. The way that businesses have had to engage with us has changed enormously. So really excited to hear from Tammy and WorldPay.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. It's fantastic speaking at this brilliant event today, and listening to some of the other speakers as well has been absolutely inspirational and amazing. So my name's Tammy Bowen. I am the local regional manager for WorldPay. We are actually based around the corner in Spinningfields and have been for quite a number of years now. We're actually over in Hardman Square. So who are WorldPay and what do we do? We are the UK's largest payments provider. We operate both with various different sort of card machines and stuff that you can use to get your customers to pay face to face. But more often than not, we're finding that we're operating in a much larger e-commerce space. For example, we operate in 146 countries around the world, 126 different currencies we can process in. And we operate in over 70 different business verticals. So the payment space really was quite innovative prior to COVID. Just to give you some sort of supporting figures around there, if we take the period from 2010 to 2020, just before COVID hit, cash was in a massive decline already. So 2010, around £5 million a year was spent on cards. That had shifted to a massive 15.8 million before COVID actually hit. If we look at cards as well, if we look at cash as well, that obviously went on the backwards sort of trajectory. So 20 million a year was spent in cash in 2010. And then if we go to sort of 2020, that had declined to 6 million. So the payment space was already beginning to innovate. We were selling and providing solutions to customers to hit e-commerce markets. 9 out of 10 people do say that they pay online and also via their smartphones. They don't necessarily use the old-fashioned checkout process anymore. We've seen a massive rise in buy now, pay later applications. Cash is falling. For example, although it still accounts for 17% of payments, it's rapidly declined, even in the last couple of years, by 35%. So we were already looking at ways in which we could obviously innovate. Obviously, COVID hit in 2020, and majority of our businesses that we were dealing with basically closed overnight. We are massive in the hospitality space as well as retail. They're two of our biggest sort of business verticals, and they closed overnight, as we all very well remember. Or did they? They didn't necessarily go. If you remember, how did we eat during COVID? We got takeaways in, we sat in the garden, we got beers delivered. Everything became a lot more accessible without you actually having to go into a premises. So how were you paying for those particular services? Most of the time, it was via WorldPay integrated payment gateways, whether that be on an app that you downloaded on your phone when you went outdoors, when we were allowed to meet in sort of groups of 6, if you remember that, and we were able to sort of place orders at our table. We innovated those apps behind that to allow you to do so. So you were still able to access goods and services and pay for them using your card. It meant cash wasn't exchanging hands as much, because everyone remembers the sort of the fear of germs and stuff that came with that. So our customers were already starting to innovate and to come to us and say, you know, how do we do this? Is there anything that you can sort of provide us? One of the funniest ones that I sort of came across really was an estate agent, and they're actually one of the biggest, or the biggest estate agent and letting agent in Leicester. They also have offices in Manchester, but the head office is in Leicester. And they still needed to be able to take payment from their customers that were moving house. People still had to move in COVID. People still had to rent rooms and houses in COVID. So they basically says, well, what can we do? We still need to take payment from our clients, but our offices are closed. So we provided them with state-of-the-art mobile terminals that not only flipped to 4G, they also flipped to 5G as well. So that enabled them to be able to take those payments remotely. But also they said to us, well, we still want to be able to do auctions. How do we do that? Right, let's move on to Teams, let's move on to Zoom, let's hold these huge virtual sort of audiences virtually. So we devised virtual terminals and pay by links that enabled them to securely take payment via that very sort of secure and safe method. And not only did they take the payment that they normally would have done from their customers, they actually increased their business growth during COVID, believe it or not. So what does the future hold? So obviously we are getting back to normal. Our bars are open, all our customers are up and running again. But we also look at our at the future. So one of the big sort of products that we've trialled and is out and about in the marketplace at the moment is virtual reality payments. So what we have found from our customers is that they may not necessarily have a storefront to bring their customers to anymore. They may have had to diversify. It may be that they've had to bring that sort of in line. So what we've developed with one of our partners is a way of providing your customer with a virtual reality headset so they can enter your actual store. They can look at a kitchen or a bathroom or all of the lovely products that they want to buy, and they can buy them via a WorldPay corporate gateway in that virtual reality world. So you're giving that customer that fantastic experience. If anybody wants any more information on this or would like to talk about it in more depth, please do let me know. I'll be around after this, and also I am available on LinkedIn as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks ever so much, Tammy. One of the things that I always say about companies like WorldPay is it's probably one of the biggest companies we all use without knowing we use it. So you might not have heard them before, but almost certainly if you went back through the things that you've bought, places that you visited, you will have used some of those systems, and really fascinating to see just how quickly they've been able to adapt to a new way of doing things. Our final speaker of the day is Chris from the Mank Group. I'm sure many of you are aware of the Mank. They have an incredible reach across the region and expanding it into more northern areas. As with many businesses in Greater Manchester, we always kind of look at them as being like one of the most engaging, exciting platforms out there. So we couldn't quite believe it when we mentioned Northern Game Changers, and they were like, cool, let's partner on it. We're like, are you sure? Like, did you know we're just a little startup? But they've been absolutely phenomenal, helping us get the word out about the Game Changers, helping us out with shortlisting drinks, and also supporting on the awards themselves. So if by any chance you don't already know about the Mank, please do check them out, and Chris is going to tell us a little bit more about them.
Hello, I'm Chris from the Mank, or the Mank Group. So thank you all for coming and listening to me. I believe I'm closing the show, so try and make this short and sweet. So who are we? Well, I've got a nice little video to show you, a snapshot. A very small snapshot into the great fun that we have at work pretty much every single day. So who are we? We are an audience-first social publisher We've got one of the largest engaged hyper-local audiences across the UK. We position ourselves creatively with a nationally local, is what we like to say, recognising that without local, there would be no national. So that's one of the things that we really like to champion, so providing that really local coverage on kind of a national scale. As I mentioned, local publisher with national reach. Sorry, I've repeated some of my notes. Audience first is our biggest thing. So we have, just in Manchester alone, we've got 1.7 million followers with over 2 million followers across our group. So we are very much the Manc group now, and we've got other locations, which I'll touch on shortly. But Facebook is our largest audience. It's our bread and butter, but TikTok is one of our fastest growing areas as well. That's really allowing us to tap into a much broader audience. So we don't just appeal to, 25s and over or anything like that. We are now reaching people who are 12, 13, 14, educating them, showing them what Manchester's got to offer, showing them what their regions have got to offer. So there's so much more, and so much more that we can tap into as well. We are also on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So again, we're able to reach so many people, so many different platforms, and the clients and stuff that we work with as well. We're able to tap into audiences that they may not be able to tap into themselves, and kind of work with them on reaching different areas and different people. We launched as a viral social page on Facebook. It literally just used to show memes and some nostalgia photos, and the audience just exploded. From there, we have now become a multi-city social publisher, as I've said. So we're in Manchester, obviously. We're also in Leeds, Sheffield, Newcastle, and soon to be some more cities too. We like to give a voice to the north. We feel like the north sometimes is forgotten, and so we like to be able to champion the north and what's going on here across Manchester and further afield. We produce innovative video content and social content too, capturing people's interests and being able to champion and push the news in a new and a different way. We've got some really fun content that we like to put out too, which I have another video just to try and fill in a little bit more time of my talk.
Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat. Keep it on repeat, tested by the potion, loving this devotion. Live it up, sweet emotion. Every time, every night, you and I on a roll. Switch it up, switch it up, switch it up where I'm going. Stay on the fly just in time, know the right way to go. I'm on the road, it's my time, taking control of my life. I want to run the red lights, I've got to run this show. You always take me so high, you always make the highlights. I love the way we vibe, you're like a centerfold. Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need.
Loads of different original series there, stuff that we like to do, create authentic content, real content, shown via the eyes of our readers and the people who we kind of interact with. It allows for everything to be more authentic, and it really engages with our audience. We like to work with people. It was actually fantastic that Invisible Cities are here. We've actually been out and done some filming on one of their tours. So we get to do loads of stuff that's, educating people about their local area, that's stuff that they don't necessarily know exists, but we can kind of give them a point of view from that through their eyes. We like to champion the passion in the cities that we're in. Things like short stuff, educating people, things like Mad for It, where we like to go to, I think there's a giant scale Extrix somewhere up in Saddleworth. We're going to go there, film that. We've just done laughing yoga. So kind of really championing the fun, different, quirky, interesting things that are happening in our cities. And again, it's across all our cities too. So Manchester is our starting point, but in those other local cities as well, we're able to cross-pollinate into those areas and be able to bring that kind of original content to those places too. So where do we go from here? Well, hopefully expanding into more cities. So we like to try and work with as many different people as possible. Again, give that voice to the local areas. We like to work with big brands to help then support smaller brands. We're working with, as you may have seen, Deliveroo. They run our takeaway, or they sponsor our Takeaway Champions series, so we're able to use a big brand like that to support small independent restaurants. We've worked with people like JD, TalkTalk, Skiddle, all those kinds of things too, Bruntwood. So it's just about working with bigger brands who are able to get sometimes more passive brand awareness and advertising and that kind of thing, but we're also able to help champion their local areas too, which is very much our ethos. And that is pretty much all I have to say. So thank you all very much, and I believe we're now all going for gin. So, gin.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we've heard so much about what makes an innovative business, how you have to plan to innovate, how you need to get out and about. And the Manc is absolutely doing all of those things. They make it look so easy when you see it on screen. It's fun, it's shiny, it's a viral video. And what you don't see is the mountains of work that goes into being able to create something that's successful, how close they are to their communities, how quick they are to jump on new trends. Absolutely phenomenal organisation, and really proud that we have them in Manchester and are then going to go out and show the rest of the North how it's done. That is it from us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks again to our sponsors, Bruntwood Works, NSpec and Navigate. Massive, massive thank you to Manchester Central to inviting us to be part of today. We absolutely love this venue. It is so wonderful to see the doors back open, people coming in. We've got more events planned in this space which we'll be sharing about in due course.